What's going on, guys? This is Ketchup here, and as you can see, this is some unique single-player content that we recorded from the exact same session that Bandai Namco UK let us capture some match footage from. Now, we've been sitting on this single-player footage for after the network test was finished. Of course, that now is done. And as you can see, this is the character creation. This is what's in the build so far. I don't know if there's going to be more stuff, but as you can tell right now, there is a significant amount of custom races that you can select. You can see shapeshifters like orcs, lizard man, skeleton. It's all really, really unique, and you can be male and female. In this video, I kind of thought I'd sit down and run through my first impressions of what this was and how it felt. As this was a promotional build, we are definitely missing a lot of stuff. There's going to be a bunch of clothing options missing, and as you all know in Soul Calibur, you unlock those as you go. So with the limited resources that I had, I actually really wanted to try and make something a bit unique. You guys know this is a Mortal Kombat channel, this is a NetherRealm channel, this is where we were kind of, were crafted from. So I thought best, why don't we make a Mortal Kombat character? I saw the mummy as a preset, and it was a very easy decision. The second I saw a mummy, I was like, Ermac, let's try and make some Ermac. And you'll see by the end result that we got kind of like halfway there, I guess. Now, fighting style wise, that's the first thing that you select. I picked Aswell purely because of the stance alone. I had no intention of using him in a match because in this build you couldn't actually use your created character in a real match. The Libra of Souls mode, which I'll be showing you in a later video, involves something a little bit different. So this is purely stance alone, and for that reason we went Aswell just for his standing stance. Height, you have a bunch of different height options. I know I've kind of talked over a couple of these, but you can see them as they go. Basic build, you can kind of go, big, medium, or small. And there's a whole bunch of different sizes here for different arms, legs, hips, all that good stuff. So you can be pretty detailed with exactly how you want your guy or girl to look. And we didn't really use this very much because the one thing to mention, we only had 30 minutes maximum of footage that we were allowed to record of this, so I was on a time limit. You can hear here there's a bunch of different voices you can give. I'm actually going to be quiet just while we go over a few of these. You can hear the one I went with, which was Alien. It sounded the most Ermac-y to me. And as you can hear, you can completely warp it. So I'm assuming if you wanted to make certain characters, you can change their pitch, you can give them a basic voice, change the manifestation. So Alien sounded weird, so I went with it. But, if you were to try and make Ermac in the full release, it probably would be better to give him like a sinister voice and then see if you can change the manifestation of that as well to make more of like a corrupted human voice, which is a lot more of what Ermac sounds like. So I was messing around with the vocal pitch to try and make him sound right. At this stage, I was unaware that at the time you couldn't use your created character in Libra of Souls. It is going to be in the full game. It's just for this build purposes because of some online cloud system or something very similar. You can't use your custom character that you make here in the single player mode, but you can in the full release. Color-wise, I thought it was, appropriate for Ermac to give him a sort of black mummy wrap. Not too dark though. I think if you go too dark, you lose a lot of the detail. So I kind of wanted to make sure that we had something that resembled detail, but also was a dark, color. So we kind of went with an extremely dark gray, not necessarily a black. So this is the basic. This is the undersuit and the mummy costume. It pretty much does what it says on the tin. You can't change a lot of features, eyes, hair, facial hair. You can't do any of that with the mummy costume. It is an entire wrap, which actually works quite well for what we were trying to make. But as you can see, you can't change a lot of them. There was some pausing here, just as I was actually sitting right next to History Behind the Warrior. History Behind the Warrior had a bunch of reference images that we were going by. I want to give actually a shout out to History Behind the Warrior for letting me use his recording equipment. We had encountered some serious tech problems, and he had actually kind of spent the allotted time he had to record footage, so he very generously let us use his recording equipment instead to get the footage that you can see right now. So thank you very much, mate. We really appreciate it, and you're a bro as always. Now, going through the headgear options, I decided to just go with a headband. As you can see, there's not a huge amount of options you can choose from right now, and again, a big part of that is promotional build. I don't know if this is going to be like the basic and you unlock more as you go, or whether some of these will be locked. Maybe there'll be even less on full launch and you have to unlock them all. I'm never against unlockables though, if it gets you playing the single player content and the story modes and everything else, or if you naturally unlock these pieces as you go. I know you would unlock them in Soul Calibur 5 and 4 by just playing, you know, online modes and all that stuff. So, in terms of the chest piece, it kind of felt like from what we had, as you can see here, there's, for what we wanted, which was Ermac, you know, he's used to wear that kind of like, you know, that gi, that ninja gi, or that ninja garb that you would wear. Don't have any of that. I know that has been in previous Soul Caliburs, so I'm going to assume that's in the game at some point. We don't have it right now. So I decided to go with the sort of Roman Centurion armor. That was pretty much entirely because Ermac in the future games has a lot more like buckles and belts and metal pieces on him. I'm going to show up some reference images throughout the course of this video so you can kind of see what images we were working off. But particularly in Mortal Kombat 9, you know, the Mortal Kombat 9 Ermac had a lot of greys and a lot of padding. So for now, we just went with the Centurion armor. We remembered specifically that certain belts can cut off pieces on the bottom. This Centurion armor has a sort of like, you know, a skirt section. I'm sure there's a different word for that and I've got it wrong, but as you can clearly see, there's a bit on the bottom which goes out. Obviously, Ermac doesn't have that in the game, so we kind of, at this stage, banked on there being a belt that would cut it off. You'll see later we were correct, and there was a belt which we could use to remove it. But now we're just going in with baggy pants. I was looking for different pants, and originally I was looking for pattern more than I was looking for shape. And we realized later on that it's actually shape at this stage is what you want, and it's color and pattern later. I was not aware of how much patterns in depth you could go. I'm not going to talk about that too much now. You can see it later as we go. But I decided to just try and give him just nice baggy trousers because, you know, that's the ninja costume way in Mortal Kombat is if they're having ninja trousers, they're going to be baggy. They might be a little bit tight on the bottom, and that's where the boots come in. Now, this was the belt section. There really was no belt I was after. I know there are belts in previous Soul Caliburs that kind of have that big circle in the middle. It's like a traditional leather belt on the outside, and there's a big circle in the center, which is normally with Ermac like a bright soul green, and it looks really cool. And there have been some previous images in the past of people that have made Ermac in 4 and 5, and it's looked really sick. As you can see, we didn't have those options here, and again, I'm really pinning that to just the fact that this was a promotional build that does not have everything. It would be kind of, you know, crazy if they gave us absolutely everything on tap this early, even before the game's out. They're going to want things to be secret and, you know, for you to find things out. So I was looking for the right belt to give him. The sash, I kind of liked the sash and I kind of didn't. I know the sash normally goes both ways, and I really didn't like how much it was clipping into the chest piece, so we went elsewhere. Right now, I'm just looking through various options. As you can see, the belts don't all remove the bottom sections of chest pieces. Some of these don't. In this case, this one did not. And I was just looking for other options. And I think in the end, I ended up going with just a very, very basic belt that kind of, you know, hang down a little bit. Went for more of a traditional ninja look rather than anything else. And this belt also, you know, cut off the little bottom piece of the chest without clipping too much, which was a really big thing for me, so I ended up just going with that. This is me looking through the neck options. There's not a lot here either. They're very, very, you know, few and far between. You know, it's wings, it's a cape, it's a cravat. Like, there's a lot of differences here. I ended up going with the cravat, actually, because Ermac was always kind of known in the modern games for being quite, you know, raggy. You know, there's a lot of rags kind of hanging off him, a lot of cut rags. So for now, I just went with that, and that's all there is to it. Going into the gloves, again, it's a lot of armor. There's a lot of varieties, and just for like a basic, what looked like somewhat of a ninja glove, I believe I did just go with, you know, these gauntlets. So I went with those instead, which is what we like. And just remember, I was very conscious of time here too. We only had 30 minutes, as I said, so I did not want to run out of time. I really wanted to try and finish it. Here are the shoulders, and it's very, you know, I don't even really need to go into too much detail for these. You can see there's plenty of shoulder pads, and I felt they were unnecessary for what I was trying to achieve, so I didn't go with them. Here come the legs. The boots were tricky, because Ermac in particular in MK9 and the 3D MKs, you know, Deception and Armageddon. In Deception and Armageddon, Ermac had the exact same costume. And in MK9, he actually resembled his MK9 look quite heavily. In Mortal Kombat X, they kind of differed away, and he looked a lot more like a sorcerer, a lot more mystical, aged, old, a lot baggy, you know, lots of baggy clothing and stuff like that. Whereas the image I was going off was a lot more MK9 and Deception, Armageddon focused. So I was looking for just the right Greaves, really. I wanted Greaves that would retain the baggy trousers, whilst at the same time weren't too thin and had the shape in the front that I needed. So I was you know, looking through quite a lot of these. I didn't want them to be too chunky either. And you'll see what I went with. I actually believe it was these. I did go with these ones in the end, because you can clearly see here that they have that sort of nice plate on the front and nothing on the back, whilst keeping the baggy trousers. So I very much just kept those. And I believe this final section, I was trying to go for a little bit of like what could have been maybe some glowy eyes or something similar. These are shapes. You can put shapes and objects and everything else on a character. And it's actually pretty in-depth, to be completely honest. These items you can give to your character, and you can put them anywhere. As you can clearly see right here, you can place them anywhere you want. So I thought maybe I could take like a shell and shrink it, really, you know, really finely shrink it, so it resembles almost like an eye shape. Maybe I could make it bright green and try and, like, you know, emulate or simulate what Ermac's eyes look like. But you'll find out very soon that it didn't quite work the way I thought. You couldn't make it as small as I'd hoped. You can make them small, by all means, but, you know, within reason, I think. You can't make them minuscule, which was kind of what I was hoping for, to give him, like, some eyes. But, you know, I decided not to in the end. I went, you know what, nah, they don't go small enough. I'm going to ignore that one. Went in with one of these shapes instead, thinking maybe they could go a bit smaller. Like a cylinder, I tried to go with for the same reason, and I couldn't shrink that either. But I would think, you know, when the customization comes out, you would use all these assorted shapes to really, you know, you would use these assorted shapes to seriously give detail. In hindsight, actually, looking back, I probably could have given the cylinder to a belt. I could have probably taken a regular belt, just a regular everyday belt, and taken a cylinder and rotated it, and then, you know, had the flat side facing, and then we would have been able to have that big circular Ermac green soul style gem that he has on his belt. It's kind of funny watching this footage back. I definitely could have done that, and we wouldn't have just had to go with the sash. We could have had the sash in front and the belt in front. I could have just used a shape to simulate that instead. I went in for the glasses originally, just to see, can I give these a green tint? And I was like, nah, you'll see the frames, it'll look stupid. So, and you can't move the glasses either, so I very, very quickly got rid of these, if I remember right. I was almost going a little bit too detailed. I was very conscious of the time I had left. Now, it doesn't look like Ermac at all right now. I know that's what you're thinking. You're watching this and you're looking at the colours and the shapes and going, that looks like barely anything that resembles him. Now, you're half right. You're definitely half right. I didn't have a lot of tools or time. I did what I could, but this changes very quickly once we go into the colours. And I do think I've gone into everything now. This is all the shapes that I had, and I'm just kind of doing a last-minute sanity check. And this was, this was the stage where I was kind of just reviewing what I had so far and went, can I work with that? Is that good enough? And I did. So you do the shapes first. You can do random generation, as always. And this is where we go into the colour scheme. This is where you can start to really bring out the detail in a character. And you'll see that I went from basic shapes to something that looked, you know, pretty decent, I think, given the time I had and the limited resources. This is where we begin. I just made everything kind of black first, if I remember right, just so I had an idea of what I was looking at. And this is always what I like to do back in the old days too. I would essentially change colors as a base and then start working off that. This is where the detail comes from. You can give lots and lots of patterns. There's 18 patterns here, but as you can see, there's 5 categories of different shapes and sizes and different decals and stuff like that. So with this in mind, I tried to see if maybe I could just make the skull pattern really big, and this is basically just me learning it for the first time. So at this stage, you know, there's really not much to see. It's just me kind of exploring the different shapes that you can give your character. And I use these patterns to achieve the color schemes that I want. Not necessarily, I wasn't going for patterns here. I was going for ways I could take a pattern and then deform that pattern to try and go with the color that I wanted, or the pattern that I wanted in terms of like block color. You'll notice far down the line that what I start doing to get the shapes that I'm after is I go with like, linear patterns, and I make the size as big as it will physically allow, which would normally be considered way too big. But certain patterns, if you make them massive, you can make them so large that you can take a basic block color, trouser, for example, and give his trousers, or pants, if you're American, don't worry, I'm using different words, stay with me. You can use a line color scheme, which would normally be a very fine stripe pattern, make it humongous, and then you've just given something like a two-tone color scheme, because you've got one half one color, one half the other, which you'll see later is what we were after. Now, Ermac, has kind of got like some, I think he has a gem on his headband. I believe he has that in both Armageddon Deception and Mortal Kombat 9. But I didn't really have the time to go for it. Again, in hindsight, I probably could have given a small cylinder or a small shape to his headband, and then probably could have just put the gem in manually. But for design purposes, I just gave him one of these, made it black and green, just so it has, it's the right color at least. It is the right shade of green, but we just kind of went with that, because zoomed out, it looks pretty cool. And, we kind of just went with the basic. Now, I believe the chest piece is where I spent the majority of my time. I was looking... He has a very detailed chest piece in MK9 and the 3D Mortal Kombats. And definitely, I'm positive you could probably achieve what you were after, or what I was after. But again, given the time constraints, at this stage I was already here for 16 minutes. I wasn't particularly sure how much time I would have left, and also I was very conscious of the time I had to record other footage. We only had a set allotted time slot to record this session, and I didn't want to spend all my time on character creation and then have no match footage for you all, because there were a lot of characters in this build that weren't playable in the network test, and I really wanted to capture some of that too. So this was the first thing that I did. I ended up going with this kind of like diamond pattern, and I start to really try and drag it up some to kind of give us that sort of that diamond quilted looking pattern that he does actually have in mostly Mortal Kombat 9. It's mostly MK9 that he has that design. So I went with something very similar here, and this is basically just going to be me exploring different color schemes until I find one that I'm happy with that kind of looks like it somewhat resembles what I'm looking for. So while I'm going over this, I may as well kind of explain the rest of it. So, as you've clearly been able to see throughout this run-through of character creation, I had a rough idea of who I wanted to make, and I had limited tools, but I still feel very strongly that it was enough to work with to make something pretty neat that you look at and go, wow, that looks pretty cool. I'm a fan of that. You just make these random characters that you have fun with, when you play it with friends or whatever. All the casual modes that you would do, you can now make something that you really like. When you go over Soul Calibur 5 or 4 and you look at the character creations on there, over time, some people have made some really neat custom characters. I've seen Scorpions, Sub-Zeros, basically every ninja under the sun. There's Liu Kang, there's Raiden, and these are people that have unlocked every cosmetic in the game. And then they use those cosmetics to really, they use those cosmetics to make something super highly detailed. And now I think memory fails me. I can't remember if these patterns were in previous Soul Caliburs as well. By all means, they could have been. But I was really blown away by just how much options we had here in this run-through. Because we, by all means, you might be able to unlock more. You might be able to unlock more patterns. And I just went there for a block red to see if it looked right. And then I looked at a block red and realized, it still doesn't really look like Ermac. So I kind of went a bit more dedicated to the separation of grey, black, and red. Red being the predominant color here, and then having black and a little bit of grey. That's pretty much the general, the color palette that Ermac has in the old Mortal Kombat games, which is definitely mostly red. And then black and grey as well. MK9, they kind of emphasized the grey just a tiny bit more in his base costume. And then Ermac's alternate in MK9 had a lot more of an emphasis on traditional black and red again. So I almost finish up here, I think. I go with, as you can see, it's mostly black and red in general. And then I have like a slightly greyed crisscross. And that's kind of like how I tackle it. And I think we move on to the arm pads after this. But yeah, just in case anyone's wondering why I was trying to make this, you guys know us by now. We're big fans of Mortal Kombat, and I figured if I'm getting access to this character creation, there's only going to be so much you can do with character creation from a promotional standpoint, especially if, you know, you might go into it without really knowing what you want to create. And I kind of figured, let's try and use this opportunity to be, you know, one of the first channels to go out with a set goal, really wanting to make something specific, to see if it could be done in a short space. This, in many ways, is like a speed build, if anything, you know, because this video is not even going to be 10 minutes off the time limit, 30 minutes. We're 20 minutes in right now. But I really wanted to see if I had the time to achieve what I wanted to achieve. And right here, you can see I'm happy with this. I'm happy with the chest piece. It will do the job for now. You know, it will do. I even see myself maybe using this kind of color scheme on a slightly better chest piece once I get it. Now, I've gone in with the MC Hammer Pants. You'll see what I did here. It kind of goes back to what I was talking about. If you take these stripes and make them huge, like here, we've now given ourselves a two-tone. Just a regular blocked out two-tone. I changed the shape to try and make it as, you know, symmetrical as possible. I didn't want it to be uneven, and as you can see here, I've made it even. And we now have the two-tone that we were looking for. You know, I can put a picture of Ermac back up here or previously or whatever, and you'll see that he has these strict two-tone trousers where it's black one side, it's red the other side, and it's, you know, mostly black on the inside and red on the outside, I think. I actually haven't seen a picture in a while, but you can see here it's not a problem. We go with the two-tone black and red, and it's starting to look a little bit like Ermac at this stage, and I'm happy with it. I'm really happy with the trousers. I was definitely a lot more happy with this costume's lower half than I was the upper. And that's purely just because we didn't really, you know, I never felt like we really had the right chest piece for this. But as you can see here, we're going into the belt. I just go with the regular black belt, and I decide to just make the center of it green to kind of emulate that green effect that Ermac has in the center of his belt piece. Again, you know, we're talking about hindsight. I really should have taken one of those cylinders and made it really small and flat and put it in the center to kind of give that belt the soul stone that he tends to have in the game. But right now, yeah, I just go with the basic design. I think I mirror it or move it so it's more in the center. There it is, yeah, it's right there. And then I make it green, and it's as simple as that. I don't really do anything fancy. You'll notice here on the arm pieces as well, once I've moved them over, the yellow, in typical sort of Bandai Namco customization fashion, you can't change every single color. So with his armbands, they did remain yellow, and, you know, obviously in the full release, if I were to make this build again and do a new Ermac, I certainly wouldn't go with these arm pieces, but it was, I think, the closest I could get with the time I had. So you can have to just rock out with the yellow in this one, but definitely rest assured that if you're trying to make this in the full release, there will definitely be better arm options you can pick than the ones that I currently went with. So kind of giving him a once-over for now. I'm kind of happy with the progress that we have. He's starting to look a little bit like Ermac. You know, I definitely consider this a budget Ermac of all sorts. And this is when I realized that you can only change one color, which is the block section. You know, the armored section, if you will. So I just make that red, if I remember right. I make that red like the rest of it. But again, you know, I certainly wouldn't go red. Oh no, do I go black? No, I'm pretty sure I change it, do I? Yeah, I was changing certain colors here. I was looking through what else I could change, I think. And then I settle with the color scheme at the end. Yeah, there we go. We've started to make the arm pieces red. Starting to resemble him a little bit. Starting to, you know, resemble him just a tiny bit. And here comes the trousers. And, you know, the armor is already set and done. Now we're moving on to the leg armor. And I give him that very bright silvery grey armor on the front. You know, and we're starting to get there. I think this actually might be near the end of what we were looking for. And there is nothing else to customize. So yeah, we've gone in with the sort of silvery grey leg armor. We've gone in with the colors. I'm giving him a little bit of a revision. And now, yeah, we're 24 minutes in. I believe this was kind of where we start to finish things. So my goal of this session for making Ermac was to very much go with a base and go, hey, look, can we make the most budget Ermac of all time in the 30 minutes that we have? I didn't even know what character I wanted to make at the beginning, but the second I saw the mummy preset, I decided that we would just go with Ermac to see if it could be done. Because with the mummy preset, you could have some pretty cool looking armor on top of it. So I think that's basically where we went with his armor. So visuals, he's now done and dusted. And now this is all the little bits of detail you can give. You can go battle comments. So in the single player modes, or I would assume there's things in the multiplayer maybe you can do, you can say certain things. You can go with extra presets, and the presets, or make your own ones or whatever. And it's pretty cool. Just a little bit of like flavor, I suppose, if you will. This is the rename. I found out you can actually rename characters in this. It would always call them whatever the name was. So I'm trying to give him a different name that's definitely not Ermac, because this is like halfway there. This is definitely a hash job of Ermac. I think I tried to call him Bad Ermac, and I couldn't. I had to call him Nunzio. That was what we had to go with, unfortunately. But again, that's preview build, so we can only go with certain things. Now, this is the sort of the imagery. When you pick the character select image, we're going to go with Aswell. I really did like Aswell because his fighting style, at least here, just is exactly what we're after. I specifically went with the green and yellow weapon selection too, purely because I wanted, I wanted the green weapons and the green aura. I thought, I'm assuming you can unlock a green aura later, and that would actually look really sick for this character. And that was just a really, really cool, take all of his different animations and attacks. I think you can take a lot of their animations in game. It's not like Tekken where you have like a preset of like, win pose, intro pose. You can take a lot of their different animations from Soul Calibur. And as you can see, I've got pose 30. There's so many you can choose from. And this one was like a done deal. If he's hovering, if he's got his arms up like that, this has to be the one we go with Ermac. It just makes way too much sense. And we're now just looking through custom backgrounds. I think I just went with this one, just because I thought it looked cool. It kind of looked a bit mystical, so we went with it. And that's it. So this was Ermac. This was our finished product. And we took our picture, and theoretically, this Ermac would have been ready to go. So thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this kind of like, custom bit. As you can see, it's different from the other ones that we had ready to go. I didn't make those three. I think, we might have seen History Behind the Warrior made a few of those. And the second you try and go with something more specific, you can see it's quite different. By the end of the build, I did actually have to change his fighting style because I couldn't use him in-game. As well, unfortunately in this build, there was something not finished or quite right with the character, we were told. I believe it was something like, we were told the character was quite strong in this version of the game and he won't be like that on full release. So we were requested to not film any footage of Aswell in-game. So if we went into Libra of Souls, I honestly had no idea what to give him, so I just gave him nunchucks, and that's it. Big green, spiky nunchucks. And for no reason whatsoever, I just felt like it at the time. Take care, and I'll see you next time.